Good morning, students. Good to you. Today we are starting class on urology. Students, I wanted to see all of you. That's why I wanted videos to be open so that I can greet you all and see you. This is what is missing in the online classes. There is no eye contact with the students. That's why I wanted you to see you all in the grid, right? Very nice. And then we'll go on for the slides. Today's class is on Introduction to Urology and urinary symptoms and investigations which are going to be done. What is urology? Urology is a science which deals with the diseases of urinary tract in males and females, and the male reproductive system. It is called andrology. In gynecology, deals with the female reproductive system. So urology doesn't deal with that. What is the medical counterpart of urology? It is nephrology. Nephrology deals with all medical problems of the kidney, whereas urology deals with the surgical problems. As you know, you might not be knowing, but the specialty of urology is existing from the time of Hippocrates. Hippocrates himself said, I will not use the knife, not even on sufferers from stone, but will withdraw in favor of such men as are engaged in this work. This means the specialty of urology is existing even from Hippocrates' time, and the urological surgeries were done by those specialists. So this is as old as Hippocrates. There are very many subspecialties in urology. Now that there's an explosion of equipment and various treatment modalities. General urology treats with conditions and disorders that include the adrenal gland, kidney, ureter, bladder, prostate, urethra, testicular disorders in men, and disorders of urinary tract in females. As I said, gynecology deals with the reproductive disorders in females. There are very many subspecialties in urology coming up now. One is general urology. The other one is endourology. Endourology is a specific specialty area wherein the small endoscopes are passed and instrumentations are used to see into the urinary tract and perform surgery. One is by means of cystoscopy, passing through the urethra, or through a percutaneous nephrologic tract directly into the kidneys and seeing, and through ureter going into the renal pelvis and seeing. All this come under endourology. This avoids big incisions and is now the preferred method of treatment of so many urological conditions. As you know, you have been primed in general surgery classes about laparoscopy. It's a rapidly evolving branch of urology also, and it has replaced many open surgical procedures. The disadvantage is now trainees who undergo training nowadays in urology have not seen kidney normally by an open incision. They through endoscopes only. This is training of laparoscopic training requires a lot of eye and hand coordination, and most of the urinary tract problems and reproductive problems are managed by this. The other one is urological oncology. Cancer treatment is always a specialized branch. So urological cancer also is a specialized branch and gradually treated by urological oncologists who are there in the very many big centers of corporate setup, and also Tata Memorial Hospital, and in Chennai there are centers which deal exclusively with urological tumors. Then neurourology. You have to know that neurological conditions also affect the urinary tract, producing retention of urine, incontinence, and other problems. And that requires specialized equipment to investigate also, like urodynamic study and others. So all this requires a special branch, a neurourology branch, which deals with all these conditions. Then comes the female urology. It's also called as urogynecology. It's a branch of urology that deals with the problems, urinary tract problems exclusively in females, and certain types of incontinence and incontinence repairs in the females. This is female urology. Nowadays, the robotics are being used for various surgical problems, and in urology also, robotics have come up in a very good way. The radical prostatectomy for cancer prostate and many other operations, all those which used to be done by open operation are being done now by robotics with very good results. The advantage is excellent magnification, and you can see in those areas where you find difficult even in open operations. There's the advantage of robotic urology. Pediatric urology concerns the urological disorders in children. Certain surgeons, urological surgeons, do exclusively pediatric cases. And the more you do, the more expertise you get. That's why pediatric urology has grown as a special branch in the urology. It starts from management of congenital or acquired conditions of urological conditions. So, urology is a very big branch wherein there are so many subspecialties. And nowadays, after training in general urology, people are advised to take specialist training in one of these specialist branches. So you need to have an inspiration. We all need someone who inspires us to do better than we know how. So you all should be inspired by professionals who excel in their branches. That's what we require. Then we come down to urinary symptoms and investigations. Hematuria is one of the important symptoms in urology. Means what it means? It means passage of blood in urine. But you know it is whether it's blood or not. But the patient says he's passing reddish urine. So you'll have to differentiate whether it's really blood or something else. Similar thing can also be seen in if patient consumes a lot of carrots, carrot anemia, and urine also will be colored red. Myoglobinuria also is red. That is due to destruction of the muscles. So you have to go into the details about this hematuria. And hematuria should not be taken lightly. Even if there is one attack of hematuria in adult, you have to investigate it, and more so in every age. At every age, presence of hematuria, blood in the urine, is to be taken very seriously. It may not be continuous. It can be intermittent also. In carcinoma, bladder, and some other conditions, the hematuria is only, it need not be continuous, but intermittent. So any hematuria complaint should be investigated thoroughly. It can be as simple as a infection, hematuria due to infection, or can be due to malignancies. So this symptom has to be taken very seriously, and confirmation of hematuria is by seeing RBC in urine, nothing else. So many people mistaken. Other concentrated also looks like blood. If you don't take a lot of fluids for a long time, you pass urine, that looks red. It's not hematuria. It's only a concentrated urine. So confirmation is only by microscopy. And in history, he also gives certain indications about these things. Blood at the beginning of the urinary stream means the origin is from lower urinary tract, bladder, prostate, urethra. And uniform staining throughout urination suggests an upper urinary tract lesion like kidney stone or tumors in the kidney or upper tract. That is upper tract. Terminal hematuria suggests bladder origin. This may be due to a bladder stone, vesical calicus, or infection, cystitis. Severe cystitis causes severe difficulty in passing urine with terminal hematuria, drop of urine at the end of the micturition. Usually, malignancies cause painless and total hematuria. So if the person says he's having painless and total hematuria, it is not bothered because it doesn't have any pain. For patient, it looks small, but for you, it should look ominous, and you should investigate thoroughly. These are the certain of the things which cause hematuria. Some blood dyscrasias also cause. Patients on antiplatelet drug therapy may cause hematuria, and renal causes like infarction, injury, specific infections like tuberculosis, stone disease can cause hematuria. Likewise, stone, ureteric stone, and other malignancies in ureter, transitional carcinomas can also cause hematuria. Renal tumors and bladder tumors are the common causes of hematuria, apart from stone disease. Specific infection like tuberculosis also causes hematuria, especially bladder cystitis. And bilharziasis infection, Cystosome infection is a specific thing which is seen in certain areas of India, also causes hematuria. And prostate infection causes hematuria, and patient is having benign prostate hypertrophy, patient has hematuria, should never assume it is due to the prostate hypertrophy, but because a carcinoma bladder can coexist This is called decoy prostate. The malignancy is not seen, but only prostate is seen. So you have to be more careful about those things. So how to investigate? First of all, examination, microscopic examination of the urine should show RBC in urine. Are normally RBC seen in the urine? Or always is abnormal? 1 million RBC are secreted in urine per day. So there will be RBC in the urine normally also. Maximum is 5 RBC in a centrifuge specimen of urine per hyperfield is the maximum number of RBC that can be seen. If it's more than that, it is significant hematuria. Apart from blood cells in the urine, you can also see various malignant cells if they are there as a reason of hematuria. And then microscopic examination also will show whether there is infection by means of presence of plenty of WBC in urine. So infection is seen by presence of WBC and in the presence of RBC, but RBC will not be much. WBC will be more compared to the RBC. And in malignancies, without any infection, there will be RBC in urine. At the same time, cytological examination gives you an idea whether there are any malignant cells in the urine, which shows the reason for hematuria as malignancy. So once you conclude that there is hematuria, you have to investigate. The first investigation is by doing an ultrasound examination. Ultrasound examination is almost an extension of clinical examination, wherein you can find things which you cannot by clinical examination. So ultrasound examination gives the lesion, where it is it in the kidney, ureter or bladder, what is the reason, whether there is any growth in the bladder or not, or there is edema, the bladder wall suggestive of the status, like that. And if the ultrasound also sometimes is followed by intravenous urogram. IVU means intravenous urogram, wherein you inject a iodine containing dye into the blood, which is concentrated, filtered, and excreted by the kidney to visualize the anatomy of the kidney. IVP shows the function of the kidney as well as the anatomy of the kidney function, starting from calyces, pelvis, ureter, and bladder. So any lesion here is seen by doing IVU. Nowadays, the CT scan is supposed to be a sophisticated investigation case of hematuria, wherein you can find even a small tumor in the kidney, which is not otherwise seen. And it is regarding upper tracts. For the lower tract, you have to do a cystoscopic examination. Suppose, say, in a 60-year-old man, complains of hematuria, you cannot take it lightly. You have to do a cystoscopic examination. That means you pass a cystoscope through the urethra into the bladder and see how the prostate is and how the bladder is. Is the bladder normal or any growth? Then flexible cystoscopy is another thing which you can do in your office itself, clinic itself, doesn't cause much pain. And also once there is hematuria, it can be either medical in origin or surgical lesions. Medical lesions of the kidney like glomerulonephritis, various nephrotic syndromes, nephropathies, they result in microscopic hematuria. So you'll have to see for proteinuria and cast crystals, something like that. And proteinuria is a significant factor which shows the hematuria could be due to medical lesions of the kidney. That is about hematuria. Hematuria is presence of blood in the urine confirmed by microscopic examination, and it has to be investigated thoroughly if this is a symptom. We have gone through the investigations and reasons for hematuria. The other symptom with which patient presents is a pain in the kidney, ureter, vesical pain, prostatic pain, testicular pain, epididymal pain, local and referred pain. This pain, each pain is significant and features are there. Renal pain is due to stretching of the renal capsule, increased pressure in the renal parenchyma, pelvic system, or swelling of the parenchyma causes the stretch of the renal capsule and it causes renal pain. Renal pain is only very much localized to the renal angle, loin, and it is not radiating. It is so, a renal colic is a misnomer. Renal pain is constant, it's not a colic. Maybe due to infections, inflammations, trauma, wherein there is increased pressure on the renal capsule and it causes pain. Renal calculus also causes a fixed pain, but not a colic. Tumors and cysts, unless they are large, they stretch the capsule, they don't cause any pain. So fixed renal pain may be due to medical reasons like pyelonephritis or due to surgical reasons, but is very much fixed in the loin, doesn't radiate. Whereas a ureteric colic, an acute pain comes in waves, in between the patient is all right. Each wave causes severe pain, and this pain radiates down from the loin to groin. From the groin to loin, radiating to ipsilateral iliac fossa and genitalia, tip of the penis also. Usually caused by movement of the stone. Stone moves, a ureteric calculus moves. Whereas a renal calculus, if it's big, doesn't move. It is very much there in the kidney. Whereas the ureteric stone, the PUJ, pelvic junction, if it bypasses in the kidney, the ureteric stone is always found in the kidney and comes down. So if it travels down to the ureter to be passed normally, it causes severe pain. And this pain can be associated with fever suggestive of infection, hematuria because a rough stone goes around ureter, causes hematuria. So ureteric colic pain occurs only when the stone moves. If the stone is fixed stationary, not moving, there will not be any pain. Sometimes in hematuria, ureteric colic can occur. This is because of the clots, blood clots. Otherwise, hematuria, even tumor hematuria, which is total, will cause pain because of the passage of clots. Then you come to bladder pain. Bladder is in the suprapubic area. This discomfort is made worse by bladder filling or emptying, both sides. This is due to irritation of the trigone, and sharp pain is seen at the patient appreciates pain, sharp pain at the tip of the penis. That's why in a vesical calculus, at the end of the maturation, the stone rests on the trigone and causes severe pain, severe bladder pain. As long as the bladder is full, it may not cause much pain because that floats in there is some water cushion. But if after emptying the bladder, the stone sits on the trigone, which is very sensitive, there's sharp pain. Severe cystitis also causes discomfort at the end of maturation due to cystitis infection, and this is called strangury. Then perineal pain. Pain in the perineum is due to mainly prostatitis and other causes. The penetrating ache in the perineum and rectum with inguinal discomfort. It is often blamed on prostatitis, acute prostatitis, or sometimes chronic prostatitis causes severe pain in the perineum. Apart from other conditions, that's why you have to differentiate between a perianal abscess and a prostatic abscess. Prostatic abscess causes severe perineal pain. Likewise, perianal abscess also causes severe pain in the perineum. So you'll have to differentiate between both. And continuous pain without obvious reason is called prostatodynia. Prostatic pain, which is not due to acute chronic prostatitis, cannot demonstrate, but it is prostatic pain. She is given the term prostatodynia. It's very difficult to treat. Maybe some personality disorder also is there. And then we come to urethral pain. Urethral pain is severe burning pain will be there in the urethra when the urethra is inflamed, like in gonococcal urethritis, there is pain, edema and infection of the urethra. Likewise, in this severe pain is felt both in the vulva or penis during voiding. And then certain things which you have to know, because patient may complain of these things, you have to identify these conditions. Pneumaturia. Pneumaturia is the passage of gas in the urine. Suppose somebody says, I'm passing gas in the urine. This is called pneumaturia. And this only suggests a fistulous communication between the urinary tract and the bowel at various levels of the urinary tract. Commonly, it is around the bladder due to carcinoma of the sigmoid colon or diverticulum sigmoid colon. With diverticulitis, abscess formation, and perforation into the bladder. Patient says he's packing fecal matter also in the urine. This is pneumaturia. Or there may be severe infection by gas-forming organisms. When the patient says he's packing fecal matter, it is due to communication with the bowel. Then chyluria. Patient says I'm passing whitish urine, milky urine. Then it is chyluria. The passage of lymphatic fluid or chyle in the urine is chyluria. It is due to a communication between lymphatic system and urinary tract. A fistula-like communication occurring that causes the passage of chyle in the urine. This can be at various levels, but due to retroperitoneal lymphatic blockade at cisterna-chyli level, there is back pressure, and the lymphatics in the pelvis or elsewhere in the urinary tract, they burst into the renal collecting system and pass urine. Associated with this, there can be some hematuria also. Filaria, trauma, tuberculosis, and retroperitoneal tumors are some of the reasons which can cause chyluria. Then anuria, this is a very important symptom, but misunderstood by the doctors and patients themselves also. Patient says, I am not passing urine. And doctor also says, feels that patient is not passing urine. If he doesn't examine, he comes to that conclusion. But if you examine, patient may be having retention of urine, but he is unable to void. Then also he says, I am not passing any urine. So you have to examine and differentiate between anuria and retention of urine. Anuria is complete absence of urine production. Oliguria is when less than 300 ml of urine is excreted in a day. Why this 300 or 400 ml? Which is the minimum urine required to be passed by the kidneys for excretional solutes. If it is done like that, that is oliguria. Anuria is total cessation of urine production due to various reasons which we can discuss later. So this has to be differentiated from acute retention or chronic retention. Then we come to altered bladder functions and symptomatology due to that. Failure of storage, bladder has got a storage function and an expulsion. Storage, bladder distance gradually to accommodate about 400 to 500 ml of urine till you get urine sensation. Then when you want to pass urine, then there is a relaxation of sphincter and a contraction of the bladder allowing urine to be passed. So failure of this mechanism of storage or contraction can lead to various symptomatology like urgency and frequency. What is urgency? Patient wants to go to the toilet number of times, but every time sufficient urine may not be passed, but he has urgent to pass urine. Frequency and urgency. Urgency means he has to go, otherwise he will wet. And there is another symptom called hesitancy. An old man goes to the toilet to pass urine, but he cannot initiate urination for few minutes. This is called hesitation. Frequency, urgency, hesitation. Then narrowing of stream. Narrowing of stream is once again due to some obstruction or failure in the bladder to contract. Failure of emptying function is when the bladder outflow obstruction due to either bladder neck obstruction or obstruction due to prostate, which is around the bladder neck, or weakness of detrusor. Bladder can be overactive bladder or underactive bladder. It is overactive bladder that leads to frequency and urgency. Underactive bladder leads to retention of urine. So underactivity of the bladder may cause difficulty in emptying, and the patient will not be able to pass urine and may have chronic retention of urine. This chronic retention of urine presents sometimes with overflow. At that time, patient may say, I am passing urine better compared to previous thing. I am passing urine more number of times. But actually, it is chronic retention with overflow. And sometimes patient may say nocturnal bedwetting. This is again due to storage function deficiency. So these are the certain symptoms. Then urinary tract infections and other things also can have some systemic symptomatology. Fever with chills and rigors occurs with urinary tract infection, more upper tract than lower tract. Pyelonephritis, prostatitis, or epididymitis. And in tuberculosis, specific infections like tuberculosis, fever, weight loss, and malaise are non-specific symptoms of manifestations of tuberculosis or malignancy in genitourinary tract. With all the symptomatology, we have to investigate. Investigations in urology are as important as the symptomatology for diagnosis. You have to be clear in your mind what you are investigating. Investigations are classified grossly into two things. One is first for diagnosis, how to establish diagnosis by these investigations. And the other investigations are investigations done to assess the fitness of the patient for surgery. One, or if the diagnosis is malignancy, to know for the extent of metastasis. So investigations are twice are divided into either established diagnosis or know the severity of the disease. First examination is urine. In urology, the first examination is in urine. In our OPD in KGH, we used to give a bottle to every patient who comes for the urine to be collected for culture and sensitivity without wasting time. So urology, urine examination is very important. Urine examination is multiple. A lot of things to be seen in urine. A lot of diseases can be reflected in urine. It starts from specific gravity of the urine. A fixed specific gravity shows chronic renal failure. Urine function, important thing is concentrating and diluting ability of the urine, acidification property of the urine. So these two things are lost in renal failure. So it may become, will not be acidic, or fixed specific gravity could be there. These two things also will be seen in urine examination. Then you have to look for protein in the urine. Proteinuria is nowadays seen by dipsticks, whereas previously we used to boil the urine, which gives some opalescence. That could be due to protein or phosphaturia also. Phosphaturia also, again, you add acid, that disappears, whereas proteinuria stays like that. Now, everything is done by dipsticks, screening for urine infection, presence of hemoglobin, and everything is done by these steps. Then biochemical examination, you have to do to know whether the patient is a diabetic, because infections are more common in diabetics, and certain of the conditions, right, renal papillary necrosis are more common in diabetics. Hemoglobin, electrolytes, and renal function tests like blood urea and serum creatinine. All these things should be done to know the level of function of the kidneys. Then this 24-hour urine sample is done for estimation of proteinuria. If there is proteinuria, you have to quantify the proteinuria, for which you do a 24-hour urine sample. And also, in certain cases of recurrent renal calculi, where a metabolic origin is suspected, you'll have to do a 24-hour urine sample for the abnormal excretion of the products like this: oxalic acid, calcium, creatine, and other things. One important examination of the bladder is, urine is microscopic examination. Microscopic examination is done in a centrifuge specimen under the microscope, where you look for pus, RBC, bacteria, Cas, crystals, and Physiosomia ova. All these things can be seen under microscopy, and it has to be done as a routine. We used to do it ourselves as internists, as house surgeons. We used to do all the urine examination, and even as postgraduate in urology, I used to do this urine microscopic examination to see the crystals. So these are the crystals which can be found in the urine: calcium carbonate, triple phosphate, calcium phosphate, ammonium urate, calcium oxalate, uric acid, sodium urate, cysteine calculi, and other crystals. All these crystals can be seen in urine, specific crises. Then for urinary tract infection, we'll have to do a midstream specimen urine cultural sensitivity. Then only you know whether there is urinary infection or not. You have to take precautionary measures like retraction of the prepuce, cleaning the genitalia, and then taking clean midstream specimen of urine for the culture. It is more than 10 to the power of 6 organisms, significant bacteria, and we use the culture and sensitivity test for this. As I told you earlier, cytological examination of urinary system is for malignant cells should be done for every case of hematuria. And coming back, renal function test. Kidney has a large functional reserve. Even if one kidney is destroyed totally, the kidney maintains the homeostasis by doing the test. So urea and creatine can be normal even if one kidney is gone. God has given 2 kidneys, but 1 kidney can be given to somebody else also, because single kidney can sustain. That is the basis of renal transplantation and donation of the kidney. People can survive with 1 kidney, taking care of all these things. Common tests performed are urea and serum creatinine, as I told earlier. And certain specific tests are done for specific purposes. As I said, one of the functions of the kidney is filtration. Glomerular function is filtration. So this can be done by glomerular filtration rate, which has specific values for specific age groups. Once again, if it is abnormal, that suggests renal failure. As I already said, low specific gravity means CRF it is fixed. Then we come to imaging. After the biochemical test and the urine examination, single most important thing is imaging of the urinary tract. Imaging of the urinary tract we used to depend previously only on straight abdominal KUB X-ray. KUB X-ray based on, because most of the urinary calculi, about 70% are radiodense. They will be seen in X-rays. Whereas uric acid calculi are radiolucent and may not be seen in X-ray. This X-ray requires some preparation so that gas shadows do not dominate. And also, if there is a stone in the shadow in the area of the right side, you have to take a lateral view. A gallstone is also seen on the right side. A kidney stone is also seen on the right side. How to differentiate between the two? Take a lateral view. The gallbladder stone is close to the anterior abdominal wall, so it is far away, whereas kidney shadow falls on the vertebral column. That's how we differentiate between gallstones and kidney stones on the right side on a straight abdominal X-ray. Then you have to do intravenous urogram. Used to be done very commonly previously. This once again, as I said, tests the filtration, excretion, filtration, concentration, and excretion. The dye contains iodine, at least 300 milligrams per ml, and various non-ionic, ionic contrast media are there. They can be injected. This is to demonstrate tumors and calculi that affect the kidney, whether there is dilatation of the pelvic system or not. And to demonstrate abnormal anatomy that is seen on ultrasound. Basically, the first test done is an ultrasound examination. Then, if there is doubt, you do the intravenous exam. Here you are showing the IVP. These are the minor calyces, major calyx, the renal pelvis, and the ureter. So, this is a normal cupping of the ureter. Normal cupping is there in the calyces. If it is bloating, that means something abnormal. It's like that. This is a normal intravenous urogram. Next investigation we'll be talking about is a micturating cystourethrogram. Here, to know the effects of the stricture and other investigations, to investigate the bladder and look for any abnormalities in the bladder like reflux or the urethra, you have to do a micturating cystogram. More so in children to diagnose post-urethral valves. Catheter is passed into the bladder and dye is injected, and patient is asked to void. So you see the bladder, this whole of the bladder, this is the bladder neck, prostate urethra, and the rest of the urethra. So this is called a micturating cystourethrogram. Then this is called a retrograde ureterogram. You inject the dye through the external urethral meters into the urethra. You see the bladder is filled up. There is bladder neck and the urethra coming down. There is a dilatation of the urethra. There is a narrowing here and again urethra. This shows a narrowing of the urethra, which is called the stricture. So this is the ureterogram. You know this stricture here. This is the distal limit. How to know the proximal limits, you will do a micturating cystourethrogram. Then retrograde ureterogram. Sometimes you on intravenous urogram, you don't find the pelvic system well delineated. Then you will have to do this retrograde ureterogram. The ureter is catheterized by cystoscopy and contrast is injected to visualize the upper urinary tract. Useful if there is doubt about intraluminal lesion and renal function is not very normal, but risk of infection is there. This is the retrograde ureterogram. This is ureteric orifice. This is the ureteric catheter. That's how it is ureteric catheterized and dye is injected into the ureter. Then antegrade pyelogram. Suppose you cannot do from below, you will puncture the kidney from above and inject the dye and see what is there. So percutaneous puncture of dilated renal calyx system is done, and then this is done, one for investigation, the other one for placement of nephrostomy tube to drain the kidney when it cannot be done from below. To drain an infected kidney, a percutaneous nephrolithotomy, all these things are done. And if RGU is not possible due to distal obstruction. That's one antegrade pyelogram. This is a picture of an antegrade pyelogram. You see that is a dilated system and this is filled up. This is called antegrade, retrograde, antegrade. Antegrade from kidney downwards, retrograde from ureter upwards. Likewise, retrograde ureterogram, if you inject the dye through the maxillometers into the urethra, and antegrade when there is micturating cystourethrogram. Then the other imagings which are done are cystography by injecting dye into the bladder. We have already seen micturating cystography. Urethrophy, retrograde ureterogram we have seen. Angiography, which is rarely done now with the advent of computerized tomogram and MRI. But digital subtraction angiography is used to delineate the renal artery. This is the renal artery origin from the aorta. And then selective, this is the selective cannulation of the right artery to injection. Selective renal angiogram to show abnormal results in a renal carcinoma. Here, there are a lot of abnormal results as renal carcinoma. Of course, the slide is wrongly placed. Ultrasound should be the first examination of the urinary tract. Whenever you have some suspicion, either whatever it is, to delineate the urinary tract, you will do an ultrasound first. In the kidney, you can see hydronephrosis, which is a dilatation of the pelvical system, a mass, presence of a cyst or stones. Then bladder, post-voiding residual volume, to measure the post-void residual volume. And because in a prostate hypertrophy, patient retains a lot of residual if he is not able to void. So this is one of the methods of determining post-voiding residual volume. That is self-explanatory. After voiding, how much is urine is remaining in the bladder. Then for scrotum ultrasound is done to diagnose tumor, torsion, and secondary head seal. And transrectal ultrasound is done for carcinoma prostates. Normal ultrasound is done for abdomen. Transrectal, put a probe into the rectum and do an ultrasound of the prostates. This is mostly done to delineate the anatomy of the prostate and for diagnosis of carcinoma prostates and selective biopsy of a nodule if found on ultrasound. This is an ultrasound examination. This shows the shadow and the shadow following this. This is a calyclus. They diagnose this by this shadow appearing behind. This is ultrasound shadow. So this is ultrasound examination. Then nowadays CT examination is done for most of the things, for delineation of the kidney and other problems, retroperitoneum, lymph nodes, and great vessels. Here in this CT, this is right kidney and this is left kidney. This is all right, whereas here it shows a rounded lesion in the kidney. This is probably carcinoma of the kidney. Then other imagings are MRI, radioisotope scanning with technetium-99 for function. In a child, this is preferred. I chose a radionucleus, this is called renogram. And this is preferred to radiological studies because a lot of radiation will be taken by these methods of imaging. MRI is also very good and complementary to each other. MRI and CT are complementary. And radioisotope scanning is done for diagnosis as well as follow-up in children. Then the endoscopic examination, as I said, cystoscopy, ureterorhinoscopy, all these things are used to see the intraluminal lesions, the bladder and ureter. Now, I'm going to show you endoscopy, cystoscopy view. Here, you are going as along into the bladder. You see that this is the trabeculations of the bladder. That means hypertrophy of the bladder. Hypertrophy, there is an obstruction. Then that is the ureteric orifice on the right side. And you can also see left ureteric orifice on the opposite. These two lobes are prostate lobes, which are coming and joining in the midline. This is prostate obstruction. This is a middle lobe of the prostate. And this is called verumontanum. You know what verumontanum is. So that is regarding, in brief, about urinary symptomatology, urinary investigations, and introduction. What are the various branches of the disease? And if you have any questions, you can ask me. I'll be ready to answer. How many of you are interested to take up urology after this lecture? If there are no questions, that means either you have understood or you have not understood anything. Anyway, rest of the class we will follow every week about certain urological topics. And I have been asked by HOD surgery to teach you what is required for an undergraduate examination, right? And I've been asked to come down, not to teach you as a super specialist, but an undergraduate, what is required for you in the examination. I've been given a list of all questions which are asked, and we'll try to do all those things in the coming lectures. Can you please explain once more the difference between stones in the kidney and the biliary tract? I said there is a stone in the right kidney, a big stone shadow in the right renal area. As you know, kidneys in relation to the spines are related to L2, 3, 4 are the vertebral bodies, along with this kidney is there. If there is a stone in the renal pelvis, we have to differentiate whether it is kidney stone or gallbladder stone. Gallbladder stone also looks a rounded stone. How to differentiate? This is by taking a lateral view of the KUB. In the lateral view, the renal stone impinges on the vertebral column, whereas the gallbladder is anterior to anteroabdominal wall. So the shadow will be closer to anteroabdominal wall than on the vertebral body. That's how you differentiate between a renal stone and a gallstone. Very simple anatomical factor, whereas kidney is retroperitoneal, close to vertebral column, whereas gallbladder is anterior. So it will be close to anteroabdominal wall, and this is on the impinges on the vertebral column. I think you have understood the difference between these two. This problem doesn't come on left side, it comes only on the right side. Can be standard imaging tests for diagnosing kidney stones nowadays. Nowadays, whatever may be stone, ureteric colic or something like that, non-contrast CT scan is supposed to be standard of investigation. Every person with ureteric calculus is asked to have a non-contrast CT scan, plain CT scan, which can diagnose this calculi. Whether in X-ray you can miss radiolucent stone, in ultrasound you may miss small stones, but in a contrast CT you can find the non-contrast CT can find the calculi. What is the size of renal calculi? We indicate. Surgical removal depends on various factors. One such thing is the pelvic junction is 5 mm in diameter. So the stone passes through that, it can come down to the ureteric stone. As far as ureteric stones are concerned, less than 8 millimeters can be treated conservatively. I have seen even 1 centimeter stone being passed, but it is rare. So 8 millimeters, up to 8 millimeters can be treated conservatively. But if the patient is having severe fever with chills and rigors due to obstruction, then you have to intervene surgically. Surgery doesn't mean only removal of the stone directly, can mean only passing a stent in that to that ureter, may relieve the pain and also chances of infection, and stone can be removed at a later stage. So up to 8 millimeters can be treated conservatively, asking the patient to take a lot of water and wait. Both the patient and the surgeon should have patience to wait. Renal stones nowadays, the management has expounded. Ultrasonic lithotripsy is replaced by so many lasers and other things, which are very effective in treating a urinary calculus. We use electrohydraulic method in our parts, lithoclast, something like that. So ultrasound lithotripsy is superseded by laser. Now the preferred method is laser lithotripsy. Right. Thank you very much. Anything you can give feedback. I have given you one day earlier what it is going to be taught. I plan to do it each time I'm going to take a class. You can read, prepare, have questions and ask me. Right? Thank you very much.